Let's have a look at the remove the background tutorial so that we are left with the shadow area over here, and we can darken the shadow or remove it altogether. So to do this, I'm going to select the outlines of the box, then move the outside of the image, including the shadow, to a separate layer. We can then send all white pixels or all white values in that layer to the alpha channel, which will leave us only with the shadow. And we can then duplicate the layer or change the opacity to change the intensity of that shadow. So we start with this 3D GIMP box with a shadow, and it's all a single layer. So the box is part of the background. So we want to select the box. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to zoom in using Control and middle mouse wheel, and I'm going to place my guides on the corners of the box so that I can easily select the exact spot. So I can move that. So if I want to move a guide, I can use the move tool to move the guides. And to add a guide, I simply click on the ruler, hold down the mouse button, and move the guide. So down here, I'm going to add, you can add as many guides as you like. The more guides, the more accurate your selection will be. So let's do that last one over here. And now I'm going to switch to the lasso tool. All paths, I could also use the paths tool. In this case, I'm not going to select any curves, so I'm going to go with the lasso tool because it will all be straight lines. When I click, my mouse cursor is going to snap to the guides. So I'm quickly going to go around. There we go, and there, and click on that one to close it. Then I'm going to press enter to commit. Now I've got an active selection. I can move my guides off now using the move tool. So I click on the guide and just move it off the border and leave it, and it's gone. So I move that out of the way. Now I've got my selection. Now I want to select the outside. So Control I inverts my selection, or I click on select invert. If you can see over there, I've got my lines indicating the selection. It's on the outside. I'm going to press Control X to cut all of that, and then I'm going to put a new layer down and say Control V. GIMP indicates that there's a floating selection. It asks me, what do I want to do with it? In the layers window, I can anchor that floating selection or add it to a new layer. So I'm just going to click on anchor. To get the transparency, I'm going to select that layer, select to add transparency to that layer. I'm going to click on layer, transparency, color to alpha. The default setting is white. So as you can see, it immediately sends any white values in that layer to the alpha channel. And over there here by the layers, you can now see that. The shadow is very light. If I now duplicate this layer with the shadow on it, you'll see the shadow become darker because I've got more of those layers. I'm going to merge down, so right click on that layer, merge down, again, merge down, right click, merge down. Now I've got one shadow layer that's nice and dark. If I want it lighter again, I can just change the opacity over here. So now I'm in control of how dark the shadow is. And I'm just going to put a white background so that you can see what it looks like. There we go. If I want to darken the shadow, I can do that, move the opacity. And if I want the shadow gone, simply hide the layer. There we go. Hi, let's do the tutorial on putting some graffiti onto this background. So I'm going to work with this image of a stone or a brick object, and I'm just going to start by putting some text in here. So I'm just going to call it graffiti, scale that up, and let's make it fit in. There we go. Right. Now this is nice. I like the font, but I'd like it to be a little bit more bulky. Unfortunately, it's out of the screen, but you right click on this layer and at the bottom of the menu select alpha to selection. So now I've got an outline of my font. I'm going to go to select and grow the selection by 4 pixels. So I have some bigger letters. I'm going to add a layer in the background. So I'm going to go over here and add a layer. That layer is going to have transparency. Click OK. And I'm then going to fill that selection with white. In this case, your choice. In my case, I'm going to choose white. Now I want the font to be on top, so I'm going to put the text layer up 1, and I'm just going to change my font color. Press R for rectangular select tool, click anywhere to clear the selection, and then press T for text. Select all the text, change the color on that. Now I'm going to merge the font or the text layer down onto the filled selection. So I'm going to right click on that and say merge down. So now it's one layer. I can then manipulate that with the Shift T tool. I'm going to zoom out slightly to make it look a little bit more interesting. And this is just me playing around. So I'm going to show you some stuff. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. Just want to make it fit into this upright line over there. Transform. There, it's done. Now we want to make this flow into the background. So I'm going to select the graffiti layer, the text layer, and I'm going to go to Filters, Map, Bump Map. And on this dialog, I'm going to click on the question mark, select the stone background, double click that, and immediately you'll see a change on the text. But you'll see in this case that the lines on there, they don't line up with the bricks. And there's a good reason for that. My text layer is actually bigger than the image. So the offset values over here means that the background stone is being applied in the wrong position. So instead of figuring it out what the coordinates should be, I've got a quick fix, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this layer size to match the image size. So I'm going to say layer to image size, and watch the yellow border now. There we go. Now it goes and sits right on that border of the image. Now when I go to Filters, Map, Bump Map, and I select the stone layer, you'll see that the lines match up in the image. So I'm already pretty happy with what I see there. So I'm just going to click OK. And then we want to add some of the shadows. So this is not strictly necessary, but we can add some shadows and we can extract those shadows from the background image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that layer. So I'm going to click down here on duplicate. Now I have 2 stone layers. I'm going to put that at the top. And I'm going to convert this top layer to grayscale. So I'm going to go to colors, desaturate, desaturate. Okay. And then I'm going to do a filter on here that will allow me to extract the darkest areas, and I'm going to use the threshold filter. And when I set these parameters, you'll see I can play around with the amount of shadows that I get. So that's good enough. Click OK. On this layer, I'm going to say Layer, Transparency, Color to Alpha, and the white goes to Alpha. Now I've got these very sharp, grainy shadows. Just do a little bit of a blur. There we go. And I can now move that shadow with the Move tool until, if you watch over here, look here by the T, I can have the shadow off the bricks or on the bricks down there. Right, there we go. So that looks good. And just to finish it off, I'm going to change the opacity of this graffiti slightly, just slightly, so that it's not that bright. There we go. So there we have graffiti sprayed onto the wall, and it looks like it should be there.